So you can just look at me the whole time,
Okay.
and we'll just have a conversation.
Good.
So, my first question for you is just how did the idea come about? Is this a starter with the missional community, or how did the garden start?
Well, I think actually the big idea started before the garden.
Okay.
My husband and
sorry.
I.
Do you want to repeat the question, actually? So, like, if she asks you something, just say, we started the garden this way. Because we're going to cut her voice out.
Oh, perfect.
Otherwise, people won't know.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
If you remember,
Yeah.
if it's too hard,
No, I can do this.
you can do that. Okay.
Yeah. So how the garden started, actually, it started before the garden. We had initially thought we would move downtown after our kids grew and went to college or moved away from being in our lives. And in that, we transitioned downtown. Well, the interesting thing was that in that time frame in planning, my husband Kurt learned that Washington County has a tremendous need for foster parenting, care for homeless, that there's just a great deal of need for marginalized population in Washington County. So we started a conversation about what that would look like in our lives, and would that be something that we did with a missional community? Would it be just something we did on our own and incorporated it in? What would that look like? And at the time we were still in a really big house church. This is all super recent. Well, in all of that, we recognized that we needed a bigger home, and we started looking at bigger homes, and they were not at this scale. This is bigger than what we ever imagined, but we learned about it, and it had been vacant 5 years. And in driving in and seeing all this level land in the middle of Beaverton, we just thought, wow, God can use this in amazing ways, and started praying on the spot that if it was meant to be, God would make it happen. And wow, in so many ways, it's definitely been His hand. And so we kept saying, we could have a community garden, we could have a community garden. It kind of fell on, there wasn't the enthusiasm that we were looking for. But this year, a couple of people really started yearning to have a missional community and do something intentionally and work for a purpose. And in that, it resurfaced. Well, one of the fellows that was interested went on the men's retreat, and in going to the men's retreat, he had fellowship with some other guys that had connections, and gardeners showed up from everywhere. Jen Halls and Troy and Kyle and Susie Van Bergen. They've been yearning for the same sort of community, and so that was actually Keith Fort that was at that retreat. And he was talking to a guy named Mike Eshtay, and Mike seems to have fingers everywhere and was just able to connect the dots. And before we knew it, and certainly not on our timeline, we had a missional community. And about 2 weeks before May 1st, we had sod cutters out here and lifted all of this garden, lifted all the lawn up so that we could start tilling and pouring into it. And then things just started exploding. It was crazy. We had this goal of having plants in the ground May 1st. But we knew we needed to do some amendment to the soil. We knew we needed to figure out where the sprinkler system roots were, at least, so that we could protect them or just decide to cap everything off and ignore it. So we took those steps. We learned that we needed amendments. We found a contact, and Linda is somebody that just saw that we were being a little inefficient with tilling, saw that the cost for buying soil would be really high. So she started kind of calling around, keeping her ears to the ground, and she's the one that learned that the Portland Zoo offered free compost, and they call it Zoodoo, and that's why I keep saying Zoodoo, because we have a new name for compost in this garden, and it's Zoodoo. It's very exotic, it's organic, it's been ultraviolet treated, so it's super safe. And we'll just see how we go. I mean, we have a really big pile, so.
So how much did you guys put down? Yeah.
That's really funny too. So the story about the man who delivered the Zoodoo for free started with him just coming with a couple loads. So we were looking at getting about half of the Zoodoo we needed, which would have been about 20 yards.
Okay.
But he kept saying, but I could bring another load. So we ended up with 48 yards of Zoodoo. And that's great because we can share it with everybody that wants to take a little to their house. And it's worked out well that way. But he saw us trying to till all of this and manage it with hand tillers that aren't the super teeny ones, but they're still much smaller than a bulldozer. And he said, you know, I think I know somebody. I think we have a friend who could probably loan me the bulldozer and take care of some of this. And so he ended up going out, getting a bulldozer, coming back and bulldozing this whole thing. And we had been spending the entire weekend on that, hours and hours, and we weren't really getting very far. So it was kind of funny.
You guys moved here. Can you kind of give me a time frame on how this all happened? This is like beginning of last year. How long have you guys been here?
Sure.
When did the garden get tilled? Just give me a timeline.
Okay, that's great. So I would say Christmas vacation of 2011, we were on a road trip. We had driven through before that. So beginning of December 2011, we drove through and saw this house for sale and recognized the possibilities. Even with the guest house, we saw, oh hey, that could be a place where kids aging out of the foster system, they could live there someday. So we have all these little visions that we want to eventually pray over some more and see if God lets us execute. We'll see. But the community garden was definitely part of that. And we started kind of wrestling with the sellers. It was an estate thing, and they were going back and forth, and it wasn't an easy thing. And literally 3 weeks before we moved in was when we finally found out that this was going to be ours. And so it was a real test of patience. We never really knew until we really knew.
Whoa.
It was kind of fun because we never really just let it be all for God. And in that, the tremendous peace of going back and forth like we were playing table tennis or something, it was okay. We were just like, you know, whatever happens, it's gonna be okay. We love our house. Whatever happens, happens. And it all happened. And our house church helped us move everything from our other house. And so March 1st of 2012, we had moved everything here. And it was always just with whatever God wants us to do, we're going to do. But then we kind of had to just wait and see, well, what does our house church want to do? What do we want to do? What's it all going to look like? And we kind of had I'd call it a stagnant year of just waiting to see what was going to happen. We had these desires and urges, but we were kind of alone in that. So we were just waiting. And this past, I'm thinking it was February, we started meeting with other couples to pray and just brainstorm what are some things that we could do that could put us in places where we could serve populations in need, places where there might be a lot of people that don't know Jesus, that we could share him and do it in a really elevating way. And the garden kept coming up. And then finally, let's see, the men's retreat before April, I want to say it was at the very end of March or the very beginning of April. There was a men's retreat, and there was also a women's thing that I was at down by Seaside. And at those two events, a lot happened. And I came back, and a meeting had occurred that Sunday night or Saturday night. And all I know, I don't know if it was Saturday. You know, ask my husband. He'll have that fact.
Okay. Fact check.
Yeah, please fact check. But it was that weekend, and I came back to learn that we had a missional community that was being formed, and we were going to have some meetings, and it was really going to happen. And we had this goal of having land ready to plant May 1st. And
That's this year.
yeah,
Or
May
so
1st.
this is the first year of the garden.
This is the very first year, and it's been amazing to see how people have come to it. In that short time, people called to this sort of thing. People that moved from Santa Barbara, California to start a CSA so that they could educate kids that came to buy vegetables and to show them how to do a garden. They're here, and that's what we want to do. So that we have people whose family businesses are organic berry farming, and I mean that's the sort of thing that's going on here. So it's just, it's crazy. It's just so exciting.
Okay, so give me